All right, here we go. Back again. Once again, here we are, the Painfully Honest Tech Podcast, right here on the Painfully Honest Tech Podcast channel, where every week we come and we talk about technology-related things in the most painfully honest way possible. So my name is Jason. If you're brand new here, my name is Jason. I have a channel called Painfully Honest Tech, and this is Adam. He has a channel called not Painfully Anything, Tech Odyssey. What am I talking about? Yeah, Tech Odyssey. And so, yeah, we just kind of come here and we do this thing. If it's something you want to be a part of, then you can hit the subscribe button here on the channel.
We'll allow it.
Yeah, you can do that. You can like this video if you prefer to do that. You can dislike it, but nobody will see it. So we'll see it. We'll know. But the rest of the people won't.
And our hearts will know.
Yeah. And so, yeah, this has been a weird week for tech because it's, this is kind of like the doldrums, the springtime, where not too much is happening in the world of the tech.
No.
Not too much at all. We were just talking before we started about Tesla's released like a free month of full self-driving to a lot of their customers. And that's interesting.
I was surprised. I got in my Tesla the other day and it's like free month of full self-driving beta. And they call it something different now. It's not full self-driving beta. It's like full self-driving supervise. I think that's what they're calling it now. I think the legal team decided that we need to put something in here that sounds more responsible. And also it's not
beta sounds scary.
Yeah. Well, it's been that for a long time. But so I got to say, though, when I first got my Tesla, a couple of months after it came out, I wasn't paying like 10, 12 grand for full self-driving beta. I'm like, I don't see the point in this. I'm not spending that money. But they came out with a subscription-based model, right? So you could pay, I believe it's $199 a month for the subscription to use full self-drive beta. It's either $199 or $299, but either way, it's not cheap. I tried it out for 1 month just because I wanted to be like, I want to see what this is all about. Right. And other than the standard autopilot, which if you're not a Tesla owner, there's a difference between autopilot and full self-drive. Like autopilot is like the typical, it keeps you in the lane, manages your speed, but it doesn't change lanes. It doesn't make turns. Like it's kind of like advanced cruise control. Well, when I tried full self-drive beta last year, that's really what it felt like to me. It felt very much like just a normal autopilot, but it would change lanes. Like it wouldn't even exit the freeway. It would just change lanes. I'm like, why? This is stupid.
Right.
Well, I got this little pop-up and I went ahead and I accepted it. And I was driving and I had it on like what I thought was normal autopilot. And then it starts changing lanes and then it exited the freeway because I had my destination in there because we were coming. Well, I figured out how advanced it was when I was on my way to the Minute Maid Park. We were going to go watch the Astros. And I had it on, and it's like, why is my car changing lanes? Why is my car changing lanes again? It's like, I guess there's been some upgrades. So on the way home from the game, I thought, let's see how good this actually is. So right. I got right out of downtown. I got on the freeway. I engaged it, and it drove me all the way home. It changed lanes. It exited the freeway. And I was really concerned because before it wouldn't recognize stoplights. Like it wouldn't stop at stoplights. It would just it would drive through them. It wouldn't stop. It wouldn't make turns. So it slowed down. It stopped at the red light. It made the turn. It kept driving. It stopped at another stoplight. It pulled into my subdivision and did like these little crazy turns. And then it pulled me up right in front of my house. I was like, this is really impressive. So yeah. I think part of the reason they gave everybody this for free, well, not everybody, just certain U.S. and Canadian customers, if you have a Model Y, like a Model 3 or something, I don't know. You had to have a certain software update and something else applied. But either way, I think part of it is they're just doing it to show people how good it is now, so they'll start paying for it. It's like the introductory crack rock. Like here you go. I know you wouldn't normally try this, but the first one's free.
Yeah.
And now you can start paying for it. But I was really impressed with it. I was like, this has made some substantial leaps since the last time I used it a year ago.
Yeah. And I know it's been some of it pun intended, bumpy road for full self drive
That's
with
good.
with Teslas. Just like, I can't remember exactly how long ago it was, but there were some issues where, you know, cars were like suddenly going out of control and like, driving speed, like super speeds and all this other stuff. But they've definitely like pulled it back and done a lot more development on it. And I think it's really interesting. Like from a non-Tesla owner stand like viewpoint, uh, what makes me well, the question that I have is like in terms of how they're testing this. Like we said, they decided to, for legal reasons or whatever, they decided to stop calling it a beta. It's like if I see a Tesla on the road and I'm wondering if it's like driving itself on beta software, like that makes me a little nervous. But clearly they've done a lot of improvement. But at the same time, because we're tech people, and tech people are obviously like the low hanging fruit for something like buying a Tesla. We know a lot of people that have Teslas, and
Mhm.
so one of our other tech creators posted a video on Twitter yesterday or the day before, where Teslas have like 9 cameras on them, and he
They have a lot
had
of
full
cameras.
self, yeah, he had full self drive going, and he was driving, in where the area where he lived, and it was kind of a windy 2-lane road that was close to where he lived, a road that he travels regularly, and full self drive was doing great until at one point it just kind of like didn't quite judge the turn correctly and clipped the tire clipped the curb, and you could see he put together 2 video angles, one from the front seeing the turn coming, and
Mhm.
then one from the side where you could see post impact the hubcap like flying away.
Yeah, I heard there's always software updates. Like software updates happen all the time. It's funny because like I'm not a pro Tesla, pro Elon person. I got the Tesla because my wife is a Tesla addict, and one, I thought she could benefit from it from having another Tesla to make videos about because she has a Tesla channel and she would talk about her Model 3. But then she was interested in the Model Y. I'm like, well, I'm tired of paying $500 a month for gas, and I was like, I'm looking at getting another car because I had a WRX STI, and even though it's like 2.5 liter 4 cylinder, it gets like 15 miles to the gallon,
Right.
like
Yeah.
because of the car. So I was like, okay, I'll surprise her and I'll get a Model Y, and then one, I don't have to pay for gas, and two, she can make videos about it. And then she never made videos about it because she loves her Model 3, but she doesn't love
Right.
my Model Y that much. So I'm like, all right, why did I buy this car? But anyway, I just wanted the I wanted the gas savings.
Right.
And so when I see a lot of this stuff, even like on the internet, you see something where it's like, oh, there's a massive Tesla recall, and people will like blow it out of proportion. And you go, that just means I hit the update software button on my car, right? Like, we don't have to take a million Teslas to the dealership. I get a pop
Yeah.
up that says there's a new software update available. I press the button.
Yeah.
It takes, it's not a big of a deal. So there's a lot of anti Tesla sentiment out there. Some people because they hate EVs, some people because they hate Elon Musk. I'm like, whatever. I just drive the sucker. Like, I don't care that much. Like, I don't
Yeah.
get in the weeds on this stuff, but it, it it's interesting. But there was a thing I saw the other day because there was a software update, and apparently it was causing, at least from a tweet I read, it was causing when people were using the autopilot or the full self drive mode, it was getting too close to the left edge of the lane, like more
Yeah.
so than
Yeah.
usual. And maybe that's what led to, maybe it was too close to the left side of the lane when he made that turn. And then that's why it clipped it. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. The analogy that I feel like watching that video from him, you know, I have a now 20-year-old daughter. I had to be in the car with her while she learned how to while she learned how to drive, you know? So watching that Tesla kind of like misjudge the turns made me feel a lot like the Tesla was like a
Teenage daughter.
15-year-old, a
You know what I wish
15-year-old.
though? So as we're talking about this, so you have a 20-year-old daughter. I have an 18-year-old son. I have though two kids that both they turned 15 in December. They're like 2 weeks
Right,
apart. They started driver's education last week. They're getting their driver's permit on like Monday or Tuesday when we take them to the DMV.
right.
At this point, like it riddles my nerves getting in cars with these kids and teaching them to drive because this will be the third and fourth. We've already been through it with two kids. Now I got to go through it all over again. I hope that one day Elon Musk comes up with a driver's education mode where the Tesla can take the kid out to drive. And then,
Yeah,
like, if anything
yeah,
unsafe happens, like it'll slam on the brakes or it'll pull over, just like
yeah.
having a driving coach with you. We need a
Well,
driver's ed mode.
I'm sure that, that's something that could easily be done. I mean, you cap the potential miles per hour, you cap, like,
Well, they
you
do
know
have a kids mode. Like, they have a mode where you can set it like that, where it puts it in chill mode instead of standard mode, so they can't accelerate as fast. It like
right.
adjusts the top speed, but like I need it to do like take the wheel in case
Yeah,
something bad's about to happen.
yeah, you like, brake pedal on the right-hand side of the car mode.
Yeah, like
Did you ever
Jesus take
did
the wheel mode. Like
did you have that in driver's ed? Like, I don't know, these
Oh, I did,
days
yeah.
these days, like, driver's ed isn't taught, at least in our area, isn't taught in school. You have to take driver's ed, but it's all privately done,
That's how
right?
ours is, and it was even like that 25 years ago. I went to driver's ed in the year 2000. And we had a place down the street. It was called Street Smarts. I had to walk there. It was like a mile and a half walk. I'd have to walk in the blistering summer to sweat my balls
Yeah.
off to go get in the driver's ed.
105 degrees uphill both ways. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's flat. It's super flat. It's Houston. But so I get there, and yeah, they had it was cool because they had Camaros and they had Mustangs. There were V6 Camaros and V6 Mustangs, but they had the driver like education mode where there was a dual set of pedals and I
Right.
think even a steering wheel on the opposite side. That they worked in tandem, so like the driving instructor could take over in the event that you're going to kill everybody.
Right. Right. Yeah, I just remember in the driver's ed cars I think I took driver's ed in, like, 1988.
23
Uh,
during the
yeah,
Prohibition era.
yeah, yeah, right before the Great Depression, I took driver's ed, and, no, it's and I just remember there being a brake pedal, like an "Oh, Jesus" brake pedal. And the thing is, like, one of the hardest things to learn when you're learning to drive is where to put your car on that line so that you're the proper amount of space off of that line, right?
Yeah.
Over time, you get the feel for it, but for the longest time, like, knowing where to line that center line up is very difficult.
Oh yeah,
You
when you
gotta
first start driving, you're continually correcting the steering wheel the entire time because you
yeah,
can't keep it right in the middle.
you gotta put it right on the line of that front fender, and when you do that, you're good. But it takes a while to get the feel for it. So maybe that's what the Tesla is dealing with here. Who knows? But I, it would be really convenient if they did. And by the time this is a possibility, uh, you know, I think most of the car manufacturers will have EVs with or hybrids with full self drive, right?
In 10
And
years, like every new car will be able to autonomously drive, I'm sure, to some extent.
and and speaking of which, interestingly, just in a related but side note, I saw yesterday that Ford, who came out with the Ford Lightning, right around the time that the pandemic hit and everything like that. Um, so they came out with the Lightning. Lightning, of course, very expensive.
Yeah.
Ford cut the prices on the Lightning and were selling them at a loss. Still couldn't sell them, so they cut the prices again. And just yesterday announced that they are putting their EV development on hold and focusing more on hybrid cars.
Man, I wonder if I could go trade in my Tesla and get a Ford Lightning.
I don't know.
I mean, I
I was
like them. I think they're. I like having a truck. So I mean, who
yeah,
knows?
I
Maybe I could sweat a good deal on it.
see that's what I was thinking because we just got a
Hmm.
Bronco Sport, and the way that we did it was like we get a special rate for 3 years. So basically, it's kind of like a lease, but we own the car, you know. So it's like flex financing
So
or something
it's like
through
a
Ford.
arm based. It's like an arm based mortgage for a car.
Yeah, yeah, and so we get one after 3 years, our payment would go up, or we'd have to refinance.
Hmm.
Um, So I was just thinking, oh, well, let's just wait for those 3 years. We get the Bronco, we drive that. 3 years from now, we can get ourselves into whatever EV they're offering, right?
Hmm.
Preferably a Lightning. Actually, I was waiting for the Silverado, but be that as it
Maybe
may,
I don't know. I know GM has auspicious plans for trying to have an all EV fleet or something by like I don't know. It's so crazy now because I think they're running into some issues. So all the great intentions of legislators, especially in California, mandating that like all cars be EVs by 2035 or something like that. But sometimes like the best intentions of man can be still followed by the reality of it just can't happen. So like
well,
people, one, I don't think everybody's ready. Two, now that the gas prices have gone from $4 and $5 back down to like $2, and then just some of the other things that happen with EVs, I think politicians are more enchanted with them than most of reality at this point. But I do think that some of the plans these manufacturers had were a bit too auspicious to be cutting off the regular assembly lines just yet.
well, I think a couple of things happened like on from the time that so California's regulations were what by 2030
I think
all
it's
new
2035.
cars 2035 all new cars not all,
Mhm.
not this
Yeah,
is
all new cars. Yeah.
all new cars sold in California have to be electric vehicles. That's the California legislation.
Yes.
um which I think is a reason still pretty reasonable amount of time, but what's happening with Ford and Chevy and other manufacturers now like adopting and adapting over to electric vehicle fleets
Mhm.
is probably well it's a totally unintended situation. We had the pandemic, which caused a shortage in a lot of the parts that they would use for the electronics of cars, which then led to no cars, which then led to the car market being like totally out of whack.
Mhm.
And then we come back, and in the past year, the the economics of buying a car has changed because interest rates have gone nuts. And so
Oh, crazy.
it's affected the housing market, and it's affected the car market. And you know, for the longest time, I remember when interest rates were a big problem, like when we had inflation in the
I think the
80s.
'80s was yeah, if they were
Yeah.
really high. I mean, but I remember my mom telling me um, when they financed their first car, which was when I was a kid. We got a Plymouth Grand Voyager.
Yeah.
Back in the '80s. And my mom subsequently told me later on, we were talking about car stuff. And I remember when I got my first car in 2001, I came home from tech school from the military and I needed a truck. I needed a car.
Hmm.
And I applied for a loan and I got a 7% interest rate. And this was in 2001. I mean, that was okay. Like the best
Yeah.
rates were like 5% back then. So 7%
Yeah.
first time loan, not bad. And my mom was like, "Wow, that's amazing." I'm like, "Really? 7% doesn't seem good to me." And she was telling me how when they got that Plymouth, it was like 15% and they had to put like several $1,000s down
Yeah.
just to be able to finance the vehicle. So it's been like a big swing. I know the '80s were bad, and then the 2000s was like free love for interest rates, especially the 20 teens. And
Yeah.
now the rates are really high again. So you get some people going, "Oh, well, they're not that bad because they've seen this before."
Right.
And we had unnaturally low rates, but now I mean, when you go from being able to get 0% APR on basically anything with good credit, and now it's all 8, 9, 10%, like that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. It is. And the crazy thing, well, here's the crazy thing. Um, so I'm old enough to remember when there was the gas shortage in the 70s, right?
Oh yeah, you
And
had to like only fill up on certain days, and there'd be lines around the corner.
I
And I wasn't
remember
alive for it, but I've seen the TV specials.
I remember Saturday morning cartoons. You'd be watching Saturday morning cartoons, and they would put like the local TV station would put on like a public service announcement of like
Where you could
how
get
much
gas.
gas you could get that day and where. Which is crazy to think. Like if you didn't grow up and have that experience, then the idea of like only being able to buy a certain amount of gas and having to have that gas and be the gas that you live through the week on, right? And it's
Back when
super
they had like 15,000-pound steel tanks with V8s.
well, and that's the thing. Like it it made the car industry change, right? So
Well,
that's
that's how we got
when
the 1986 Ford Mustang that had 165 horsepower.
right, and Lee Iacocca took over Chrysler and built the K car, which was a four cylinder sedan, which like whoever heard of that, and Japanese cars became much more popular because they were
Oh
more
yeah, the
fuel efficient,
Corolla. The
and so we're seeing something similar happen again, where I think the plans that companies had for rolling out these EV fleets are now like having to be readjusted because the Ford Lightning is an incredible vehicle, right?
Mhm.
But it's a $100,000+ vehicle, right? It's
I was
absolute.
surprised when
It's insane.
oh yeah, whenever they first came out with them, I think they're supposed to be in like the 80s, and then they went up even more, and then yeah, very easily $100,000 car. And I remember when I was shopping around, and because I bought my Corvette a few months ago, and I had seen some. I was very tempted to trade in and get the Lightning truck because I mean it's quick, right?
Yeah,
But another battery powered car, I'm like, this could be nice. I don't have to pay gas, period. And then common like I my wits returned to me, and I bought a Corvette. But
right.
I mean, the prices on those Lightnings had significantly dropped.
Yeah, yeah. Which they had to because post pandemic and then economic difficulty in the car market, a lot of these trucks cost as much as like you could go to Ohio and buy a 3-bedroom house for the for the cost of a lot of these
Oh,
trucks.
it's terrible. I've owned 3 trucks in my life, and up until the year 2000, or 2001, before the price, like the used car industry, and then the prices of cars went through the roof.
Right.
Any day of the week, you could go get a quad cab truck for like 30 grand.
Yeah.
Like you could get one V6, like standard trim V8, about 30, maybe 40 on the top end, but for like a
Yep.
basic 4-door truck. And they all skyrocketed to like $70,000.
Yep.
Like, why are these like before you could get a King Ranch for probably cheaper than that, and now it's like, all right, I want a I want a Lariat, not even a 4x4, or
Right.
like a Texas edition Toyota Tundra, and you're spending 50, $60,000.
Right. Yeah, I mean this the market has kind of gotten a little wacky. I I think I heard that the Mitsubishi Mirage is the last car that you can buy off the lot for under $20,000.
Oh, it's terrible. I My wife, when I got my wife her first car, when I got her a car after we got married, because we had like I had my car, but we had a Suburban, and she mostly drove the Suburban because she was a stay-at-home mom, so
Right.
she ferried the kids around. Well, once the kids got all in school, she went back to school herself and wanted to go be a X-ray technician. Of course, that's what
Sure.
I call it. It's like a radiological technologist or something like that. I don't want to pander, but it's an X-ray tech. That's what
Right.
for the layman. And we need to get her a car because she had to go do a lot of hospital rotations in the medical center, which is downtown Houston area. It's a good jaunt, like good little
Right.
jaunt. And I would have to get the kids from school, so I needed the Suburban. So we got her a Mazda 2. And this was in 2014 or 2015. I got this Mazda 2 with like 100,000 miles on it, and I paid $7,000 for it.
Yeah.
And now that car, I saw the other day, I was driving down the road and this Lexus dealership had a screen that popped up because somebody had traded one in. And it was a 2014 Mazda 2. And they wanted $14,000 for it. And I'm like, how is this piece of trash car doubled in price
Yeah.
and it's still 10-year-old car?
Yeah. It's I don't know. I mean, well, there was the time when, well, there's been an inflation in used car prices because stock was low for the longest time, right?
Well, we had all those manufacturing issues because all the lack of the chips, they couldn't make new cars.
Right.
So then it was like all of the used car lot people were like, hey, there's a huge demand. We'll jack the prices up on used cars. So
Yeah.
then you're paying, and it's bad. Like, so when you buy a new car, for like five of you who are listening to this, when you buy a new car and you drive it off the lot, it instantly depreciates.
By
So
10
one of
plus
the
percent.
yeah. So one of the benefits you get of buying a used car is if you buy one even like a year old, you're buying it post deflation.
Right.
But the problem is they've taken all these used cars and then overinflated them again.
Right.
So then you get people buying used cars at higher premium than new cars, and they're financing like 30% negative equity. And
Yeah.
then the market fell out of the bottom of it. So you've got all these people driving cars that they paid 50,000 for that are worth $25,000, and there's like
Hmm.
nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. I remember when we were, so we had three cars that we were selling. We had three cars that we were selling. We wanted to get down to two cars, and we traded one in. Anyway, I remember I went on kbb.com, and I put in all the information, right? And of the three cars that we wanted to get rid of. And just to see what the prices were for, trade in or private sale, whatever. And 30 minutes later, I got a call from a local used dealership who said, and the guy was like, "Hey, I saw that you just put these cars on kbb.com to, are you looking to sell those cars?" And I was like, "Well, maybe."
Maybe.
And he was like, "Well, we'd love to take a look at them down here, blah blah blah." And so it wasn't far away, but I was like, "Well, I can come down and talk to you about it, but I have to wait till my wife gets home because I can't drive three cars." Uh, and and so we took them down and ultimately ended up trading in all three cars, and uh, and that's how I got my pickup.
Nice.
But yeah, it ended up being, it could have been a really great deal, but it ended up kind of being a wash because I had an Audi A4 at the time, and I kind of got shafted on it because it had a lemon title,
Mm,
and it was never disclosed to me as
11
that
title.
specifically.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and so I couldn't get the real value of the trade that would have been. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the car. I think it was a California car, and California cars can like get a lemon title. Like, I
Much
think
easier.
I think if you take it back for a defect three times within a certain amount of time, it gets stamped with a lemon title
I think this is
in
the same here in
California.
Texas.
Yeah.
I had a buddy that did that, and he bought this like new Dodge Ram truck back in like 2005 or something, and he
Right.
loved that truck, but it had to go back in for major issues three times, like
Yeah.
in like the first year or something, and he got it declared a lemon and got the dealership to end up taking it back somehow and give him
Yeah.
another one. But it had yeah, his was a lemon. It had some serious issues though.
Yeah. Well, this car didn't have really any issues. I think that it was something like there was some non-critical system that malfunctioned three times, like windshield washers, or something like that, some non-critical thing. But because California has really consumer friendly lemon laws.
Oh yeah.
It got stamped with the lemon title, and so anyway, I was able to get out from under 3 vehicles and get into a payment for one, which was fine because I got LTZ trim 2015 Silverado. So it's like,
That's a nice truck.
yeah, I mean, it's basically everything. Like it's fully loaded. The only high country is the only trim level higher, right? And so I got a really nice truck, low mileage, and I think it was like 80,000 miles, 70, 80,000 miles, something like that.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's all good. But if you tried to do that now, like you can't.
Oh no.
I, when we were shopping for the Bronco, because our grandson's getting older, and my wife was driving a BMW 3 Series, um, not the best like family vehicle,
Family car. Yeah.
you know.
I
So
can
we
see that.
decided we decided like, well, we'll sell the BMW. Uh, for if you don't know this, people, European sports cars are are a pain in the ass to own.
Yeah, they
and
can have some issues with maintenance.
and and if you want to sell one or trade one, it's way more difficult than if you just bought like an American car with readily available parts and everything like that, or a Toyota or something like that. Um, so we couldn't get a decent trade in for the BMW, so we're like, well, we'll just sell it. Like we owe what it's worth, so we'll sell it
Yeah, break even.
and break even. Well, that was November. We still haven't sold it because nobody can get a loan for less than like 8-9%.
Yeah.
8 or 9%, and 8 or 9%, even on a car that you'd buy for like $20,000. That's that's a lot to spend. You know,
Oh, it is.
that's a
Yeah,
big. That's a,
the only reason that I went ahead and I got the Corvette, is I had a Supra,
right,
and I bought it right before the prices skyrocketed. So I got it basically the economy created a lot of positive equity for me in my car.
right,
Plus I put like 5,000 down when I bought it because it was like a $60,000 car. So I bought it even after owning it for 2 years. I had 7,000 miles on it. Like basically I would just take it out on the weekend. I didn't was not like a daily driver. But over time I'm like, it's really hard to get in and out of this car and it feels kind of small. So I was like, let me see what it's worth right now. Maybe I'll get something bigger. And I had like $15,000 of positive equity in it. So I'm like, I'll get a Corvette. so, but
which
the nice
which
thing is
can't be
though,
easier to get in and out of.
it actually
I,
is.
okay,
It is because one, the door opens more, but two, it because the entry to get into the Super was smaller and narrower. I had to like try and contort my body and like I'm leaning on the trim, trying to like crawl out of it and stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
having more space and having like a little, it is easier for me to get out. I mean, it's still not easy by any means. Like
yeah,
no two-door sports car is easy to get out of, but it's easier than the Supra.
yeah. I mean, I used to have a Chevy Volt. Kind of getting back. We're making our way back to the
We're gonna
EVs.
say the word Cybertruck in a minute.
Yes, we are. But I used to have a 2013 Chevy Volt, which I loved. Like, so the difference between a Volt and like a Prius is that a Volt is an electric car with a gas powered motor that assists the electric engine, right? And whereas a Prius is a hybrid, it works in between two different kinds of
Yeah,
engines.
like
So
if you're
some
below 5 miles an hour, it's battery
yeah,
only, and then it's weird stuff. But yeah,
yeah. So driving the driving the Volt was super fun because the best thing about an electric vehicle in my estimation
well, to get up and
is
go.
like the insta torque of the electric motor, right? Like you just like put your foot on the gas, and they actually have to program they have to program the software to not make
To
it
limit it.
as like G-force inducing as it would be naturally, right? So that's why when you get into a Tesla and you put it on crazy mode, it goes crazy. right?
I think that's one of the things that does get people to more easily adopt an EV though, because they're used to driving their Toyota Camry that like the engine's got to spool up to get across the intersection.
Yeah,
And then you go get in this Model 3 and you tap on it and it's like it
yeah,
just goes. There's no lag, there's no spin up time. And then I
yeah,
mean, even the base Model 3 and Model Y is like 5.5 seconds 0 to 60 time. Like you used to have to get a Mustang GT to
yeah.
get a sub 6 second 0 to 60 time.
Well, I mean, internal combustion engine getting you up. I mean, you gotta have some kind of crazy like big block V8 to be able to get up there. Like in a smaller car. Like that's what the muscle cars were all about, was to be 0 to 60 in some like at that point crazy amount of time. But the Cybertruck 0 to 60 in 3 seconds
And that thing,
is
I don't know how much does it even weigh? Like that thing's got to
it's
weigh
it's
15,000
it's
pounds.
yeah, it's I think 12,000 pounds. If I
10,
remember correctly.
uh,
Yeah,
gross
I
vehicle weight of 10,000 pounds, I
yeah.
think. Yeah,
So
that sucker is heavy.
I saw a clip of Marquez Brownlee's video where he reviewed the Cybertruck, right?
Mhm.
And he did the 0 to 60 test in the Cybertruck, on a controlled track, do not attempt, sort of professional, not really a professional driver, but
Actually, you know what?
they he had so camera outside, camera inside, the whole deal, multiple cameras.
Mhm. Yeah.
And they show it going off the line, and it is unbelievable how fast that thing goes off the line. Like,
6,500 pounds. That's what it weighs.
okay. Oh, it can tow the
10,000.
tow. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and
Um,
it can carry 3,500. So I was looking at the gross vehicle weight, which is
right, yeah, yeah,
factors in the load capacity. So yeah, it weighs 6,500. It can carry 3,500. It can pull like 10 to 11,000.
right. Yeah. So this thing goes off the line so fast. And then they go to Marquez in the car as it's speeding down this long, long straightaway. And you can see in his eyes how scared he is of how fast he's going, because he because he's going like he got the 0 to 60 in like 3 point whatever seconds it takes to go to 0 to 60, and then just kept going. And so it's like racetrack speeds, 100 plus miles per hour, just straight down this. Uh, and you could tell he was scared shitless. He
I
was
think the
really freaked out.
fastest I think the fastest I've ever gone in a car was I had a 2009 SS Camaro, and I
Yeah,
got that sucker up to I think 145 before.
yeah,
And I thought I was
yeah,
gonna die. Like, the whole car is shaking, like, I feel like, the front end's gonna come off the ground. I very quickly throttled it back from that, but I wanted to, like, max speed test it one day, and I was in a hurry to get somewhere. It was like a state highway. I was in the middle of
yeah,
nowhere. This is not like I was going down the interstate with a bunch
yeah.
of cars. There was nobody around. So, I punched it, and I can relate to that, but I haven't done that in the Corvette, but I would be interested to get into one of these cars because even if you get like the dual motor Model 3, I think it still does 0 to 60 in like 3.8 or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
So like they're crazy fast.
yeah, yeah. And well, so the one thing that I guess talking about Marquez in his video, the question that he asks in the title of the video, and sort of the bigger question to me about the Cybertruck is his videos, like, is it already iconic? Is the Cybertruck already an iconic vehicle? Like it now represents a moment in time in automotive history. Um, I don't know, and I don't know the answer to that question. I've also seen several videos this week of people picking up, like, one guy picked up his Cybertruck and was filming himself drive off the lot and get into traffic, and he merged into traffic, and all of a sudden, like, the screen on his the screen just started flashing red, and
That's not good.
and he here's the thing that he's like, "Oh wow, that's not good. Hey Elon, what's going on here?" Yeah, and then he starts like he's going down the road, car's in some sort of code red mode, and he's just like punching the screen and trying to get it to like, uh, and
Respond.
I'm like, dude, you are driving. you you are
Like, pull
driving the
over.
car. Like, pull to the side of the road and then, see if you can get your car to get out of panic mode. But yeah, and I saw it happen to somebody else. So
I've never experienced that, and I don't want to. The only thing I ever had negative that happened while I was driving is I don't know if it was a bad software update or what, but my screen just became super, super laggy, and then it became 100% unresponsive. Like the
yeah,
screen just stopped working. So I lost. I mean, I couldn't use any of the software stuff. I couldn't see the cameras, all those different things. So I ended up pulling over as a responsible driver would, and then calling my wife because this happened like 2 months after I got it, and she was the Tesla expert. So I told her what was happening and said, "Honey, how do I fix this?" So there's a hard reset thing you can do with the Tesla, if I remember correctly from memory. Like
yeah, you have to push
if
down
I
the
don't,
starter and the window down button while holding.
there's these two thumb wheels on opposite sides of the steering wheel. One controls like the cruise control, the other one controls the volume for your
Right, yeah,
stereo and things like that. And I believe, if I remember correctly, push and hold both of them for like 10 seconds.
right,
And it's effectively like it's like a hard reset on the computer. And I did that, and then it started working again, and I had no
yeah,
issues. So that was that. But speaking of the Cybertruck, I actually I preserved like pre-ordered one. I reserved
yeah.
one. Guess how long ago it's been?
Well, I mean, I wasn't it like 4 years ago?
It's been over 3 years. I
Yeah,
reserved it, I think March 6th of 2021,
yeah,
and still not available, by the way.
yeah,
The only reason I've held
yeah,
on to it is because I think my wife might still want one. Her Mazda, or not Mazda, her Tesla Model 3 is gonna be paid off next year,
yeah,
and I think she may have an interest in still getting this Cybertruck. I saw one on the road for the first time the other day, and it looks neat, but it's not for me. I don't like it that much. I would rather have a Ford Lightning than a Cybertruck.
yeah. I think
It
if
looks like
somebody were,
something it looks like something I used to draw when I was 6 with like a crayon. And now it is materialized into a real vehicle that costs $60,000. And that was the other thing. So when I reserved it, the price was supposed to be 39.9 or like
yeah,
41,000 or something like that. And then they jacked the price up so much, it's almost $60,000 now
right,
for the base
yeah,
model.
yeah. And I think that they had to do that probably because it took so long to develop. They incurred more R&D costs than they anticipated to do, right? But then the car market being what it is,
Yeah.
has probably something to do with that. And I love this. I love the founders edition or whatever they're calling it now. Like, so the people who got delivered like they paid a premium to get the first one that was the founders edition.
Mm.
And I'm just like the the regular ones aren't really going to be different, but but I mean, you're paying to be the first, I guess. You know, and
Whatever.
it is a very interesting car. I
Well,
I
it's certainly a
mean,
good talking piece.
yeah, and the thing is, like, is it iconic? I guess you could say it's iconic, but let's be real here. Like, the DeLorean is iconic. Nobody
Well,
know
the Cybertruck is iconic, I think, because of like the one is I don't think it's not iconic for performance. When you look back and you look at the Corvette, like the 67 Stingray, you look at the old Shelby Mustangs, you look at the Salines, you look at all these popular cars, and they're iconic because of their performance
right,
mostly, but one, they're also typically exotic and they're limited. A lot of like you don't say that the Ford F-150. You say the Ford F-150 is iconic because of its legacy. It's
Right.
been around for so long. Like everybody
Yep.
knows what a Ford F-150 is, but I don't
Best
think I
selling vehicle model of all time.
yeah, that's iconic. I don't necessarily think we should be applying the word iconic to a car that just came out 3 months ago.
I I think that, if you were to consider it iconic, it would be on the basis of its styling, you know?
Maybe
And
styling and pop culture. I mean, just it's just so everybody's so been obsessed with it for the last 5 years. Everybody knows what it is because of that. I mean, I tell you what, we saw one going down the road, and I thought my wife was about to, like, stroke out in the car. She was so excited, like, "Oh, it's a Cybertruck, it's a Cybertruck." I'm like, "Calm down. Don't let me get in a wreck. Like, take a
yeah.
picture with your phone." I
Yeah,
don't care that much, but I a lot of people really it's like the Elvis of cars right now.
yeah, I mean, and the word iconic can cut both ways too, because the DeLorean, like I said, the DeLorean is an iconic car for a lot of different reasons. It was one of the first mass produced uh non big 3 car company cars, right? And but the truth of it is, like, the DeLorean was a piece of garbage.
Trash. Yeah.
It was a
Well,
terrible vehicle.
would
And
it have
and
been iconic, though? Would it have been iconic if Doc Brown and Marty McFly didn't use it in Back to the Future?
I can say this. I don't think it would have lived on as much in pop culture as it has, but it would have still been iconic in terms of the automotive industry because, again, I'm old enough to remember when the DeLorean was being sort of put out there, and it was compared to what you could get at the time in the early '80s. I mean, this is the early '80s, we're talking the time of, like, all the cars are, like, cheap and boring, right?
I always thought it looked I thought it looked like a beefier, more angular Plymouth Duster.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much to a certain degree, and you would look at it and think like, "Wow, that's a sports car," but no. Um, yeah,
I wonder though,
there's a great Netflix documentary about the DeLorean
I
and
didn't
John DeLorean in
understand
general.
I didn't understand. Didn't he have like a terrible cocaine problem or something?
He was a I can't remember all the details. I'd have to watch the documentary again, but
I mean, I don't want to be smudge the man on my ignorance, but I thought there was some. I thought he had some sort of a drug problem.
it, it might have been something like that, but he was a very, like, kinda mavericky, sort of fast and loose business person. And I think ultimately that's part of what his downfall was that he just
Yeah, he turned to selling drugs in order to
yeah,
save his collapsing. Yeah, he got arrested in a $24 million cocaine deal. So,
yeah,
anyway, yeah, there was a lot of crazy stuff. But I remember watching, and it didn't catch my attention when I was a kid. Because I mean, when you're a kid, you're like 4 or 5 years old watching Back to the Future. Like, man, a DeLorean. Like, Back to the Future was cool. And
yeah,
then I went back and I watched it maybe like a decade ago, and Mario's like, "Doc, you got a DeLorean?"
yeah, yeah, and you don't pick that up when so I saw the Back to the Future when it came out, obviously. I was 13 years old. Um, so as a 13-year-old watching that movie, I was aware of the DeLorean as, like, a car that had been talked about in the media and people were aware of it, um, but didn't know enough about the DeLorean to sort of get the joke, you know? And
This would be interesting though. What I keep hearing at some point in time, Hollywood is gonna remake Back to the Future. Like they're so desperate for original successful videos at this point. They're remaking everything. I think we're getting a Toy Story 6. Um, they're making a sequel to Gladiator,
yeah,
which I mean, Maximus is dead. So anyway, so at some point we know this is gonna happen. At some point, Hollywood is gonna remake Back to the Future.
yeah,
Or they're
it
gonna
may
make a
already be in the works, I think. I think I heard something about it, but
it
I
may
can't say.
be. So, what if instead of a DeLorean, what if they put in a Cybertruck?
Well, that I mean, you could certainly get to 88 miles per hour in a Cybertruck. a lot faster than you could in a DeLorean, you know.
So does a maybe a DeLorean, maybe a Cybertruck already produces 1.21 gigawatts?
It could. You know, maybe you just get the gigawatts. You don't need the flux capacitor. You just get the
I do
gigawatts like
like
straight from the
I do like
Yeah.
though that there's a power outlet on the thing. It's on like the rear of the bed of the truck, and it does 110, and there's also a I believe there's a 220 out as well.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Basically, at that point, because there are neat things about the Cybertruck. I mean, we haven't really talked about it a lot in this episode, other than just conceptual stuff. But I mean, like when you talk about the Cybertruck, it's like the ultimate camping vehicle because it's its own remote power plant. You can plug in air conditioner, you plug in whatever the heck you want. I mean, you could even I mean, it's pretty neat. All the things you can do. It's got that tonneau bed cover that rolls out, and you can sleep in the sucker. You just get a sleeping
Yeah.
bag. It
The crazy thing about that tonneau cover though is that when you put it down, it covers the back window. It's,
Yeah, I
it's
saw
just like
that. I'm like, well, I guess they figure it's one of those interesting things because when you look at the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 5, right, and you look at this phone, most people expect or they treat this as the primary display, right?
right,
Whereas Samsung actually refers in their own documentation to the interior screen as the main screen.
right.
So the front screen is intended to be secondary. Well, when it comes to this Cybertruck, just like the other Teslas, I think it's intended that you use the cameras and not your actual eyeballs to look at things. So
Yeah,
maybe they do that because it's intended that the backup camera be the primary way to look backwards.
yeah. And I you know, it's not unheard of to not be able to see. I mean, truck drivers deal with this all the time. It's not unheard of, but it's just such a weird choice
Well,
to
I
like.
wonder though, how many people who have highlighted this have actually sat in a Cybertruck and looked out the back window? Is it even realistic? Like, I couldn't see out the back of my Supra. I can't see out the back window of my Corvette. So, I mean, can you even realistically look out the back window that's being covered up all that well and use it?
Well, I and that's the thing. I don't know. I I would love to know like what are the blind spots like in the Cybertruck
Well,
because
they got to be better than my car.
yeah, but it does seem like if you look at the way like there's a lot of body on that car. And so like m- are the cameras like absolutely necessary because there's like the blind spots are such as that you can't use the windows to
you know,
safely guide yourself into
you know
traffic.
what we should do? We need to find out what Tesla's PR email address is, and me and you need to reach out to them and be like, "Can we come to your plant and look at one and make a video about it?"
Yeah, I would love to do that because like I think doing a video about the Cybertruck from the point of view of somebody who drives a truck, you know, and not necessarily comparing it to a pickup because that's
Mhm.
not really the point. You know, it's like I don't
No.
want to compare it to a pickup, but I think that the majority of people who are covering the Cybertruck and who are buying the Cybertrucks are not like utility
Typical truck
vehicle
users.
drivers. You know,
Yeah.
they probably had, you know, they probably had a Model 3 before, or they had, you know, some sort of like mid-size sedan or something like that. So I would love to look at a Cybertruck and see how it feels in comparison to
Mhm.
uh driving a pickup. Like the thing that I love about driving a pickup is just like you were talking about how difficult it is to get in and out of two-door cars, right?
Oh,
Well,
it's so easy
it,
to get in. Well, as long as it's not like a lifted truck that you have to climb into. Typically, trucks you can get in and out of pretty easy if you're like a normal size adult.
yeah. For me, it's great because like you know, I have running boards on the truck, and
Yeah,
so I
you're
open
gold.
the door and I take one step and I grab the handle and I pull myself in, and like at no point do I hurt my back or have to twist in any kind of uncomfortable way, and it's great. Um,
I always liked the road presence. I like sitting up high off the ground. I like being able to see. You can see
yeah,
over and around a lot of stuff. It just gives you that extra level of situational awareness. And plus, there's a lot of peace and comfort knowing you're like at a 3/4 ton frame truck or even a half ton, and you feel pretty safe on the road. And
Yeah.
over the years, they've actually got some pretty decent suspensions. Like they're not bouncing around like the old GMC Sierras from the 70s. And
And
my dad had one of those when I grew up. He had a 76 GMC Sierra with a diesel. It wasn't a turbo diesel, it was a diesel. And
yeah.
I always remember that sucker was loud. And when we lived kind of out in a rural area, and I could always tell I'd be outside playing in the afternoon. I could always tell when my dad was coming home because you could hear as soon as he pulled into the subdivision, go tell mom, like, Mom, Dad's home.
Yeah, I remember after my parents split up and my dad would get us every other weekend. And the way that we would know that he had arrived was we could hear him pull the truck into the driveway. Like we wouldn't have to look. It'd just be like
Oh
you'd
yeah.
hear the truck come into the driveway. And my dad at one point bought a Suburban. I don't even know it was an early Suburban, and I don't know why he bought it, but it had front seats, and the rest of the back of the Suburban was completely bare down to the steel. And
That's weird.
I like it had just everything had been stripped out. And so there were no back seats, there was no carpet, there was no like anything.
That's really weird.
Yeah,
Your
and
dad wasn't a
so
serial killer, was he?
no, he wasn't, but
He was trying to get into Silence of the Lambs too.
he had so like my dad had bought so many vehicles over the years. Like I remember when my dad passed away when he was just about 60 years old, and it's 20 years ago at this point. Um, and my aunts he had cancer. My aunts had put together framed pictures that he had taken a picture of him with every car that he had
Every
ever
car.
owned, and literally like 40 plus framed pictures on his walls of him with every vehicle that he'd ever owned.
That's a lot. Like,
Um,
I go through cars about every 2 or 3 years. Like, I'm not somebody who can buy a car, and only one have I ever fully paid off. Like,
yeah,
normally, it's 2 or 3 years, and then I'm like, "That looks nice. I'll buy that."
I don't know that I think that when I was a kid, we bought like a new Chevy station wagon, baby blue, and I think my dad had bought like a new Chevelle or something like that. But I don't think, other than those cars, I don't think he ever bought a new car, ever. Like he liked to work on cars. He built a garage like up the hill in our backyard. He built a garage with its own grease pit and everything like that, and just worked on cars. And I remember I spent a lot of time with him where he'd just be working on cars for but that's kind of what I like about trucks as well. So I'd love to be able to compare um, the experience of the Cybertruck.
Maybe I'll try and track down their PR contact. We got a factory here in Texas where they make them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's
I'll put
right.
my investigative hat on. I'll see what I can do.
All right. And we should wrap up now because I know you got to go someplace, and I got to take the grandson to the doctor. He's got a little allergy, something or other going on, so I gotta get him checked out. Um, so we only talked about cars today. That's going to be interesting to our audience.
Yeah, 200 views.
Yes, 200
But I mean,
views,
it
5
is
minutes
tech related
apiece.
though. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
because
yeah,
it's the Cybertruck.
a lot of people are interested in EVs as like I don't know if they're going to be the sort of it tech of the next 10 years like smartphones were of the 2010s, but still interesting.
We did get
Um,
some good Americana in there though. We should have just created a podcast called Americana so we could talk about everything.
yeah, I like talking about stuff like this though because it like not a lot of people that do this online content creation have this can remember when Reagan was president.
Yeah,
I
there you
can
go.
I can remember when Carter was president. So
I can't,
yeah.
but you got 12 years on me.
Yeah, my first real memory of like something in the popular culture zeitgeist was the 1976 bicentennial because there were like T-shirts and sweatshirts and a big celebration on July 4th, and it was just like a big media event kind of
I
thing,
bet.
you know. So
It
anyway,
was about like the year 2000.
yeah, yeah. Man, I remember. I'll tell the story another time, but people were really literally afraid of like some kind of
Everything.
computer meltdown.
Oh, I
Uh,
remember. Maybe we'll
the
talk about the
Y2K.
Y2K next week.
The Y2K got kind of overshadowed because not long after year 2000 we had September 11th, which became like the defining moment of the early 20th
Yeah,
21st
it kind
century.
of
But
wiped Y2K from people's memory.
yeah. But anyway, I've got stories about that. I lived in New York then, and it was it it was a weird time. But anyway, um, thanks so much for watching, folks. If you've hung on this long, then you,
You're a very special
I,
person.
yeah, I don't know why. But we do appreciate it. We do appreciate it. If hit that like and subscribe button, come back and see us again. Audio version of the podcast is still coming. It's on its way. So just be patient as I get it all figured out. Um, Adam, thanks for the co-hostage.
Of course.
And yeah, so we'll be back again next week. And next week we'll talk about the Edsel. The first great failure of automobile times, the Edsel.
Well, we can talk about the Yugo as well.
Oh man, I want to talk about the Yugo and how like the new Rivian R2 looks exactly like one.
Next time.
Next time here on the Painfully Honest Tech Podcast, that's what we'll talk about. But until then, my name is Jason, sometimes known as the JTL. This is Adam. This is the Painfully Honest Tech Podcast, the podcast so honest it hurts. Until the next time, we are out.
Peace.